So I have Chuck Pyle here today, and he's part of our Masters of Drawing show, which is very appropriate because you taught drawing for a long time, right?
Very long time. I
Yeah.
taught a lot of clothed figure drawing and heads and hands and figure drawing and alla prima painting at the Academy of Art University, where for a while I was department chair of the School of Illustration, my alma mater,
And where is that located?
in the heart of San Francisco.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, I make sure. And didn't Francis teach there as well?
Francis taught there. Actually, Francis and I were classmates.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, long ago. And Dennis Szyminski also taught there, and there may be a few others here
Yeah,
in the show that
that's
likewise
funny.
did. So,
And so you were actually teaching that for 30 years?
yeah, that would be. I started in 1979. I took a year off somewhere in the middle, came back. It kept me social. As an illustrator, you are very monastic in your outlook when you're on deadline. So
Right.
you come back out, and there are people everywhere, and so it keeps you engaged socially. It also teaches you more about drawing because when you have to talk about it and
Right.
demonstrate it, it's a virtuous loop that just you get better, your students get better, they teach you something, you teach them something. And everything gets better as a result, unless of course you have the disaster of a demo drawing, and then you get to teach them how to get out of a total fail. Which
Bad one. And so what would you say? I mean, you've done this 30 years, specializing in drawing, I guess it's fair to say.
Yep.
Is that fair to say?
figurative
Okay.
work, yeah.
What's the most important thing about drawing? Or things, because I know there's so many. It's not even fair to ask which one, but things that really stick out.
Drawing is a conduit. It can be an end unto itself. It can be a means to an end farther past that.
Right?
The artist has to look at what they want to capture and have both an opinion about it and a love for what it is and an analytical point of view that allows them to break down whatever they're trying to capture with their visual language and make it the best evocation of what they're seeing or thinking or feeling about this in the moment. So it's a combination of heart and head and hand skill that, although it may have the same analytical tools applied to it every time, has to be individuated per pose because the model presents something to you either at your direction or at their inspiration that you have to be open to catch. And everyone in the classroom or a bunch of artists on location has the same view, essentially, but their own personal point of view about that is what differentiates us. And that makes each of these things an individual experience for us, the model, and ultimately the viewer.
And when you see, let's say, somebody who has the skill set, right? They definitely have the skill set. They might have the brain set, but they don't have the heart set as far as absorbing what this is as a person. Let's just use that. I would think you can pick that out fairly quickly, right?
Yes, and it's sad. And for some people, technical virtuosity is a deep and abiding passion unto itself. The ability to capture every nuance of tone, of edge, of proportion, and pack it into a drawing or a painting is a time-honored virtue. It goes back to the Renaissance. It is an end unto itself. I have, and if someone presents that to me, if that's really what they want to do, I strongly encourage them to pursue that. But I'm a storyteller, and all of my friends are storytellers. And how we get the story out through the drawing, that depends on a slightly different set of nuanced skills than the plumb bob and the atelier education would give you. And I would argue that from their point of view, they think they're bringing something magical to life that is full of opinion about the model, because you have to be able to appreciate the beauty of it, the lighting of it, the edges of it, the mark making that makes the illusion glow with this smooth illusion of staring through a window into a slightly darkened room and seeing something alive that you're waiting for it to blink.
Yes.
And that is really an end unto itself. That is fantastic. I mean, I'm a deep appreciator of people who do that.
Yet, it's still not that emotional connection that comes out in a different way.
It is the emotional connection is simply different.
Yeah. And you can tell that.
Yeah, and it's no
I
less.
think I can tell that too.
I'm actually, Mark, given your career in this, I know you can. I think it depends on what is important to you, viewer, and how you respond to what the artist presents. And a Norman Rockwell preparatory drawing for a painting is going to hit me different than a de Kooning drawing that is not necessarily a painting, or a Diebenkorn, or a Renaissance master. And I can stand in front of any of those and get a lot of different emotions from them, because they're speaking to me in dialects of the same language. And it is the ability, it is the appreciation of this. This is what people like you get to do. You get to teach us to see and hear in dialects that we wouldn't necessarily, just walking around your gallery, all those dialects are present and speaking in the viewer's ear quietly to say, see this, look, that's how so-and-so sees this.
Right.
And that is the miracle of drawing leading to painting, is that if you're willing to stand there and look and listen to it, you are now in dialogue with the artist in terms of how they interpret the world. How are they speaking to you? What's important to them? And if I'm standing next to Francis Livingston or Dennis Szymanski and we're looking at the same model, there will be a profound sameness and yet a profound difference between how we show our opinion about what is most important in mark making, in story, in willingness to play with the model's shapes and proportions, to capture the gesture for us.
Right.
Because it really is, all art is lying in order to get at truth. The truth has to exhibit itself in the picture. So whether it's the drawing or the finished painting or the preparatory sketch, all of these lies come together to make truth inside the rectangle. And that is the miracle of art. Yeah.
That's a very interesting way to put that. I get it. Because it is an illusion. Everything we're doing is illusion. Same with writing. It's an illusion of trying to tell a story, to get it to somewhere that this is a character that seems real to you, to me, and maybe it's the person who's reading it, but it's a complete fictional, at least in a novel, individual that you just came up with sitting in your little room in your little desk with your computer in a little kind of a daze of creativity.
Very, very, yes.
You
type, I sketch.
Yeah.
And the language is pretty much
it's very the same. Yes. And when you get a book that has emotion, you can feel it, and that's what you're trying to do. I don't think people realize that with drawings. But it is. It is that emotional connection in drawings that to me is in some ways deeper than the painting.
I think it's a little more exposed.
Yeah, okay, I'll take that.
You've stripped the layers of paint back to the drawing, and the drawing is, there's more of a nakedness to it.
Yeah, it's a skeleton.
It's a skeleton. And there's less to hide behind. And we can be bowled over by the mark making with a paintbrush and the colored palette the artist uses.
Right.
Drawing by its own limitations, there's no room to hide in that. And every misstep with a mark, every value that's not quite right, every redraw because you're making the eyebrow go up a little higher than in the second pass than you wanted on the first, those all are very much there at the surface and very apparent. They're also part of the magic that makes drawing be so enchanting when you're in the presence of someone. You look at Dixon's drawings, for God's sake. I mean, Francis and I were complaining to each other about how effortless Maynard made it all look. That's the key. Right. Because he sweated every one of those marks that he made. And there were a lot of them that got torched in a trash can.
Yeah, a third of them, by the way. Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah. He said, when he would go out on a trip, a third he would destroy. Yeah. A third he would keep for reference, and a third he would sell.
Yeah, and that's a good percentage. I don't argue that, but that's the demonstration of the point that it is the illusion of facility is an illusion. It is our way of speaking to you when we're successful with it through the illusion of facility, and what you don't see is the labor and decision making behind it inside the artist's brain and heart to get it to resonate, the one that survived as opposed to the ones that didn't.
Right.
You know, it's.
And do you find that your most successful drawings are ones that flow just kind of, I hate to use this word, but effortlessly, in the sense that it's something coming from the gut?
You can.
Yeah.
You know, it can. Sometimes you have to get warmed up a bit to get into that flow.
Yeah.
I was telling my wife the other day that I know drawing and painting is like jumping into a swimming pool and being a distance swimmer. First 3 or 4 strokes, you're keenly aware that you're floundering in the pool.
Right.
And then about the 4th stroke in, everything feels good.
Yeah.
And you just go. And it is the same with drawing and painting. That everything aligns with how you are analyzing, how you're empathizing, and your hands are doing what your brain is telling them to do. Then it has the sense of effortlessness. The follow-on to that is then you need whatever it is that you're looking at to give you something back to make it appeal to you as being less effortful, because you're looking for that little bit of a nuance of a gesture, or what can I exaggerate about this person, because there's something about drawing is always, I want to steal your soul and put it on paper. And then one day I want to turn it around and have it blink at me. That would be nice. It would also be a heart attack time. But the effort is always to find out what is the essence to you of this person, this pose, this object, that saguaro cactus, that pickup truck. And then how do you get that with just a little, you just need to goose it a bit to make it your own, and to just display the emotional intent you had that made you actually want to capture that. And that applies whether you're working on a studio painting or out doing a plein air piece or just sketching around to find where you're going to go with that studio piece, because you're looking to unlock these keys or unlock the lock with these keys that just bring the story to life initially with me, with Francis, with Dennis, with everybody else in this show tonight. And once you have that, then things tend to flow out of that much more easily.
Yeah, I would think being in the moment, literally, especially if you're, no, it doesn't matter. I think anything you're looking at, being in that moment of smell, sound, taste, whatever it is, color, light.
Yeah.
You almost have to have that kind of vibration going on in your focus to get to that stage you're trying to talk about, of that emotional connection, and then letting what your senses are telling you come through the way you draw.
Very true. I completely concur. And sometimes it happens right away, and sometimes 3 hours later you're still cursing at your charcoal stick. But you're always driving towards that goal. That where do all those things come together and allow the process to flow out from that? Then you get lucky.
And so, is it as fun for you drawing now in your later stages of your life as it was in the earlier parts of your life?
Oh, absolutely. And it's different now. I don't have 25 students staring at the back of my head, for example. I now get to draw entirely for my own experience. I get to choose what I draw, when I draw, how I draw. I get to experiment more. I get to take risks more. It is an unending pleasure to be able to stand in front of the model or in front of the landscape and draw it or paint it. It is just,
Yeah, I get it. I can see it.
Yeah.
It's capturing something beautiful in a moment that will never be.
Exactly.
Yeah. I get it.
Kind of like a detective going across an Indian reservation that somebody I know has written about. The plot unfolds.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So is there anything we haven't discussed about drawing or yourself and what you do that you would like to maybe point out or elicit?
I think in the broader sense, it is when you're standing in a museum or in a gallery, you are both standing in front of the final product that the artist has presented, but you're also staring into a bit of their soul. And I love being part of that continuum of people who are willing to bare their souls on the walls of a gallery or a museum, or people walking by on the street.
Right.
And whoever's looking at this, I just want them to ask themselves, how does this artist look different than everyone else, but yet the same? How are they talking to me through the medium of pencil or paint? And what is my heart saying back to my brain and my eyes when I look at these? Because I'll be drawing and painting until I'm dead. And I know everybody else in this gallery pretty much is the same way.
Yeah, they will.
And we'll be reaching up out of the ground with a paintbrush.
Right.
That'll be the first deadline Francis Livingston misses. But it's just, it is the embodiment of our spirit as human beings is what comes out of the end of pencil, charcoal, pastel, brush. And so when you are looking at us, you are in dialogue with our souls.
Which is wonderful, because you can go to my museum and stand in front of all these monumental drawings that Dixon did over his entire life.
And I will.
And you get to have a dialogue.
I do.
And you'll see things. You may see lots of things. I can look at some of his drawings and see, depression and sadness and happiness and joy. And
It shows up.
And since so many of them were done in situ, so to speak, you're there with that individual at that moment in time in front of those people or that land.
Yeah. Yeah. A little alkali dust goes through your nose when you look at a lot of those.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I always like watching artists look at art because they look at it differently than other people.
We do.
Yeah. Often from the side, as a matter of fact. Looking for how they laid the paint down and how did they accomplish what they accomplished.
I apologize to my friends when I go to art shows with them, because it is like taking someone into a very expensive new house with a plumber and all he talks about is the copper in the welding.
Right.
You get the emotional conversation going on, but every one of us is trying to figure out how in heaven's name Dixon, how did he do that?
Yeah.
Because he does, for all the work, the end product does work effortlessly and speak effortlessly to you.
Well, I think that's the beauty of the show.
Yeah.
You get the opportunity to see 46 artists, 7 artists, whatever, and that dialogue they've had. And they're all having at the same time in the same thing with everybody around.
It's really impressive, Mark.
It's a fun thing. Yeah, it's fun for me. And I know it's fun for the artist, which is what I really like. Yeah. Is I can tell that they're all, this is a joy for them, I think. So especially the ones who actually could come and, interact personally with the art, with the drawings, and then go to the person who did it and say, I like that.
Yeah, I have a long list of I like that stuff. Thank you for having
Chuck.
me.
I appreciate everything you do and being part of the Masters of Drawing.
I'm honored to be part of it.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Very good. Absolutely. Yeah. It's so fun talking to you.
Oh.
Because one thing I can tell you are a professor. But you do. I mean, but you do it, and I felt honored to get to sit there and hear that talk. That in an intimate setting, not with other people or whatever, but there's things I never thought of it in terms of the criteria that you have to meet for drawing. You can have these 3 things, but part of it is you have to have that emotional connection to the object that you're doing to be able to bring it to life.
Yeah, that's at the core of it.
It's at the core of it.
It is.
Yeah, that's cool.
Cool.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's go look at the museum.
All right. Yeah, we good.
All right.
Yeah.
That was excellent. That was really good. I have Ezra Tucker on here, and I'm sitting there looking at his necklace, and we have something similar there.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, I got a snake too.
Okay.
Right.
Very nice.
You're the snake.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you like snakes, but I love snakes.
I like to paint them. I don't want to live with them.
Yeah. All right.
So I'm good.
So it's interesting, but you like to paint them.
I like to paint them.
Why is that? Since it seems like maybe, I mean, you wear one,
Yeah.
you may not want to live with them, but you feel maybe compelled to paint them in a way?
I've always, just doing animals, insects,
Yeah.
birds, all type of nature
Yeah.
excites me. And, I like the drama, the danger,
Yeah.
all of that of snakes. And there's a lot of, in movies and things like that as a kid, it was always exciting when a snake showed up, an alligator, reptiles,
Yeah.
things like that.
So you felt some kind of connection, whatever it is, even if it's fear, but it doesn't sound like it's fear. It's more excitement.
It's just more excitement, dinosaurs.
Yeah.
I've done some package design for a company of dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives me a time to really, render scales and things like
Right.
that. And my wife made this necklace for me.
She made that.
And she's,
Wow. No wonder.
she knew how attracted I was to reptiles.
Yeah, me too.
And so
I absolutely love them.
So for me, dinosaurs is, the closest thing to snakes, reptiles, where you've got the danger, you've got the drama, you got the grandness of them, you got
For sure.
just all of that stimulation that I know most people have because of that. I always think it would have been nice to be living in prehistoric period, but that's irrational.
It would have been interesting.
That would have been great food.
You would have had big fences built, as I can tell you that for sure.
Oh yeah.
So we're here doing the Masters of Drawing show, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the drawing and process that you do, because really when I think of you, I think that's really one of your wheelhouses is your ability to draw. I mean, there's no...
Thank you.
I mean, it's just clear, right? The pieces that are in the show, they show a level of expertise that is not seen by many. And for sure. That bison, for me, the bison is the one that you did for whatever reason really resonates.
Okay.
And even though it's not the biggest piece,
right,
but it has a sense of, it's not perfect, which is what I like.
Okay.
I can see, and I know you did it that way too. So I could see some of the lines around the horns, the drawing lines, and just a little bit of ephemera sensibility to its neck, to the mane. That's what I get from it. I don't know if that's what you're going for, but
exactly.
Yeah.
The essence of that animal is excites me, and when I'm doing. I like doing, a lot of the really the male of a lot of the animal species tend to be the most powerful and the massiveness of them,
right,
and the power that's there. And when I'm drawing, and sometimes from memory, and sometimes when I'm using photo reference, I'm always trying to get the essence of the animal before I start to go in and render details. And my wife's an artist, and sometimes she's my art director too.
Mm.
And sometimes she will come in while I'm drawing, and she says, "Stop, leave that there. You captured that essence already just with your motion lines and so on, and creating textures and like with the bison with the woolly, hair that's around on the head and so on. It's when I'm drawing that, I'm feeling it and imagining." Running my hand through that hair. Right. Now, how do I capture that in a pencil? Using a pencil on board or on canvas. Right. And that's my challenge. Is I want to bring that animal to life, and I want to do it with the least amount of pencil line as possible.
That's what I like about that piece.
Thank you.
Yeah, there is a sparsity of pencil lines.
Okay.
That gives it soul.
Yes. Thank you.
That's what I get from that piece.
Thank you.
Which is
Thank you.
Yeah.
And when I was in college in life drawing, that was the challenge one of my professors gave me is I want you to create the essence of the model with as minimal amount of line work as possible. And he also encouraged me to use the side of the pencil rather than the ebony pencils we drew with. Right. And he would say, flip that pencil around and have it work for you, and don't you overthink it and work so hard at creating something at this stage, because you're just trying to create the essence of it, and then you can go back in and render later on if you choose to. And that was something that I enjoyed doing, was all of this action lines and then you go in and you focus. I like drawing hands.
Yes.
You know, the
one of the
hand.
hardest thing to do.
And mostly with life drawing, when I was doing the figure quite a bit, I would just have a lot of action lines, and then I'd have all of my rendering in the hands and the expression, the emotion, you know, and
in the hands.
Yeah. And everything else is just line work. And that those types of a lot of masters, you know, a lot of their drawings and always excited me as a teenager, because when I start to go to museums and see and look in books and see a lot of those, the way they drew.
Right.
It was like,
I want to do that.
Yeah. and it always feels good.
Yeah.
And that is something with drawing that is still to this day important to me. It's relaxation.
You have fun doing drawing?
Yes.
Yeah.
I love to draw. You know, I have a sketchbook with me right now.
Nice.
Where I'm sitting and drawing on the airplane in the airport, because I always say it's therapy for me. It relaxes me.
And it's something you probably can remember doing as one of your first things ever in life, right?
Yes.
How old were you? Do you remember?
Probably about 4 years of age.
Yeah.
And just sitting in any scrap of paper I could find.
Yeah.
And if I could find a pencil, ink pen.
Yeah.
Because I'm number 5 of 6 kids, and my brother, sister, and 3 sisters older than me. You know, they had pencils all over the place. They were in school. Right. And I'm a little kid, just can't wait for them to come home.
So you can get their pencils.
And they get the pencils and their tablets.
Yeah.
And I got chastised for, you know, drawing in their tablets.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure you got chastised in school for drawing instead of not paying attention too, right?
They're very good. I did, very much so.
I can imagine, because you were probably the class artist.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, and you identified with that, I'm sure.
I don't know exactly what you mean by identify with that, but it was something that I did that I was noted for.
That's identification.
And I was talking to a friend from elementary school recently that tracked me down, because he wanted to let me know that he's been searching online for me and found a lot of information about me, because he said, you were in elementary school doing art, and you did it all the time. Everywhere we went, you know, you were drawing. Yeah. And he just said, you're still doing that. And you ended up making a career out of it. Yeah. And he said, that's just phenomenal. He doesn't know anybody else has ever done that.
It's very rare, actually, when you think about it. It is. I mean, I would say the people that I represent, almost all of them would identify as being the class artist. But how many of those class artists that just never made it to art, whether they didn't believe in themselves, or their parents shut them down, or society shut them down, or life shuts them down, to continue to push through all those obstacles. And I guarantee you had every one of those obstacles at some point or some part that you had to push through to go, no, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what my journey is. So I think he is. I think he's right. To be a professional artist, to make your career as an artist, it's very rare.
Okay. See, I hadn't paid attention to it, but I believe you.
Yeah. So rare.
And I know most people, even my neighbors, just say, you know, what kind of artist are you? When I tell them an artist. Right. And then when I show them what I'm doing, they're like, you're not an artist. You're something else.
Yeah. Well, when they think artist, they think somebody does pretty pictures or whatever. But you're at a professional level of the highest level. And that's really, you know, that's a rare thing to achieve. When you look out there in the world, there's not many Ezra Tuckers. And, you know.
Well, see, I'm kind of jaded, because this is the world I live in.
Yeah, I get it.
And all my friends are artists.
Yeah, I get it.
And being here around all these artists is really exciting.
Yeah, they're all the 1% that made it.
Okay. And they're all here.
Yeah, they're all here. It's kind of like when you go to medical school and, in college, you're the smartest guy, right? And then you go to medical school and you go, I'm not the smartest guy anymore.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people like me.
There
Some
you
that
go.
are even way smarter than me.
Yes.
And you go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the advanced degree, and it's called the Masterclass
Thank
of
you.
artists for drawing. And so, yeah, these are kind of the best of the best, I think.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, and yes, that is true, because the world that I live in is I'm alone most of the time.
Yeah.
Working.
Yeah, of course.
And when I do come out of my studio and I socialize with a lot of artists, I don't know that there's another world out there.
Yeah, and that's what you talk about is art when you're with them.
There you go. There you go.
I'm sure last night you talked to a lot of artists about
Yeah.
process and, the hurdles that you all have to go through,
Oh yeah.
dealing with dealers and all the other components, right? I mean,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Sure.
it's a hard job for what you do for most artists because they have to have somebody that also helps sell the art. Not
Sure.
all, but most do. And that puts you at it's hard. I can understand because someone else has your life in their hands to some extent.
Yes.
And if they don't treat it like that, it can be scary, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is, and the biggest challenge for me is finding people like yourself. You're sensitive.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You're sensitive to what we do
Oh yeah.
as artists,
That's
and
true.
you're very respectful of that.
Oh yeah.
And there's when I run into people that are not as understanding of the journey I've been on,
Yeah.
and they're just thinking, okay, you're just drawing and painting, okay,
Yeah.
okay, when you're gonna get a real job, type of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of going, no, I don't need to know you,
Yeah.
But then when people like yourself, when you're asking questions like you're asking, and me seeing the way that you interact with
Yeah.
artists,
Yeah.
you have a respect for
Yeah. Monumental.
where we started,
Right.
and the journey that it takes to get to where I'm at in my life and my
Yeah.
career.
Yeah.
We all appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm in awe of artists, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to do their life for creativity and take all the risks and chances that they do, never knowing for sure you're going to make it, make a living or even anything. It's just, but you're compelled to do it.
Yes.
You can, it's in your DNA. It is who you are.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the bravest kind of career that you can do. And most people don't. So when that man said to you, your friend from, grade school, I didn't know anybody could do it. That's really unbelievable. Well, he's right.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I never had any doubt that there would be opportunity.
Yeah.
For me, I just didn't know where to find it.
Yeah.
And
That's why you succeeded, by the way.
Yes, thank you. And that's been the toughest part with my career, was finding people that understood it.
Mm.
Like I said, the agents that I had when I was doing commercial art, I interviewed a lot of agents just to have a personal relationship with them before I signed on with them, to find out, did they really understand what I was doing and appreciate what I did?
Yeah, and care.
And if they couldn't relate to it, then I said, okay, I'll go on to the next guy.
Yeah.
Until I found people that they understood.
Yeah. And
and that was a challenge that an artist friend of mine gave me. He was saying, you're drawing. Because he was a professional artist, Mark English.
Yeah.
And sitting down talking to him, and he was, I guess he's probably a generation older than me, and he was saying to me that your ability to draw, you have a natural ability to draw the way you see, and how you translate what you see and what you think, and you create. Not everybody can do that.
Correct.
And he said, I want you to know, because I was 21 at the time, he said, that's the strength. That's going to be the strength and the baseline of your career, is your draftsmanship.
Yeah.
And, you're doing this just naturally. You don't understand
Right.
that you're doing something a lot of people can't do.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, come on, anybody can do this.
Right.
I'm just drawing
Yeah.
what And he said, no, it's very, it's a rare thing, like you're saying to me now.
Yeah, it is.
And he encouraged me. He said, whatever you do, wherever you go with your career, or even if you choose not to be an artist and do something else, drawing is probably, is a very big part of your personality. And it's going to probably be very important to you, and you won't know it's important to you. But keep drawing. Always draw.
Mm-hmm.
And I do every day.
Yeah, and you have fun still doing it.
I do. It feels good.
Yeah.
It's a natural thing that,
Yeah.
I'm whenever I'm sitting still, I usually have sketchbooks all over the house,
Mm-hmm.
If I'm watching TV
Right.
or having lunch by myself without the family,
Yeah.
there's a pencil there and there's paper. And I've got all of these ideas and I've got paper all over the house with just ideas
Right.
and sketches of things. And at some point in time, I'll have to compile that into a book or something.
Yeah, you should.
But it's just the drawing is like this therapy for me. When I'm tense about things, I draw. And it helps me relax and calm down. And it was actually my sister was telling me about that a few months ago when we were on the phone talking. And she was saying there were times you would just disappear in the house and nobody knew where you were. Mom knew where you were. And we had an unfinished attic space. And that's the only place I could get to without having people interfere with me,
Right.
distract me. And it was a hot attic. It wasn't air conditioned or
Right.
anything.
Uh-huh.
But there was one small window, and I would sit by that window. That was my light. That's where I got, air.
Yeah.
And I just sit there and sweat sometimes, and I'm drawing.
Your other air.
And she said, you would just disappear, and you'd be gone for hours. And when she said they were cleaning out the attic once after I had left home, many years, and they just found stacks and stacks and stacks of my drawings.
Wow.
And I had forgotten I had done that. She just reminded me that was my escape. That was my therapy.
I was going to say your comfort.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that really is a form of therapy, for sure.
For me, it is.
Yeah.
And I always say it's creating, doing things with my hands. I thought at one time maybe I'd be a carpenter, because I'm, creating.
Right.
And I don't think I like, banging my fingers too much
Right.
with hammers and stuff like
Right,
that.
and it's loud and everything else.
Yeah.
And you like isolation and quiet,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sure you're very sensitive,
Yeah.
which requires that.
Solitude.
Yeah.
And I live in a pine forest. It's quiet. Mule deer come through the backyard, foxes.
Drawing
And I'm-
quickly as you
yes.
can. I'm sure.
And cameras are great.
Yeah.
I've got lots of pictures of deer coming through the backyard, but I love the solitude. And drawing is organization also. And I was telling my son that it helps me to organize my thoughts sometimes. And I've mentioned this to many people. I have a daughter that's an engineer, and she's a great draftsman too. But she doesn't realize that. I don't think she realizes that her skill is unusual, and it's probably good therapy for her also. When she's designing, she's a product designer. And so when she's producing these beautiful
renderings,
yes, she just thinks,
yeah, just like you did.
Yes. And then when I look at them and I'm saying, wow,
just like Mark English did.
Yeah. And so it took me a while to understand why he responded that way to my, because, Mark was an incredible draftsman.
Yeah, but he could see it.
And when he saw me at 21 and his response like you just did.
Yep.
And Thomas Blackshear, we used to hang out with Mark.
Yep.
And he would just, you guys are just doing this and you're not
Right. Even trained
yeah.
yet. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, he's just being nice to us, okay?
Yeah, but he wasn't. He was being real.
He's being very real.
Yeah, he sees it. I'm sure you've done that yourself to other artists when
I
you
have.
see it, and they're probably freaked out too.
Yes.
They're like, "Oh, really?" And no, because you know it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even looking around in the room like we have. You know, these are the best of the best, and you go, "Okay, I see where I am." You know.
I appreciate, the responses that I've gotten in the past when I just thought people just being nice.
No.
They were emotionally moved
Yeah, that's right.
many times
I'm sure.
by what I was doing, and I'm just thinking, man, it's just what I do.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not working hard at this. And
Yet.
and I'm
You
thinking,
worked 40 years at it. Yeah.
yes,
So,
but
it didn't come from just yesterday. So.
and yes, I'm an accumulation of all of those experiences.
Correct. That's right. And all those thousands upon thousands of hours sitting as a little boy up in the attic with the one little light coming out the window with stacks and stacks and stacks of drawings.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where it comes from.
Yeah. I wish I could go back through those drawings.
I wish I could. I wish I had them.
Yeah, just to see where I was at different time periods.
Yeah.
And so when we were talking about doing this, I was just thinking, for him to bring that up, he's got a real insight to the creative process and how important drawing is to the creative process of what two-dimensional art that I do is. And I also think, sculptors fascinate me too. And there are some sculptors that don't draw; they just start creating.
Yeah,
that makes me crazy.
Yeah,
how can you see that without?
They just got some crazy three-dimensionality in their head. And you're the reason of this show.
No,
I'll tell you why. Yeah, because I think we were at the Willow Rock. It's you, me, and Thomas Blackshear, and we're sitting. I'm talking about one of Thomas's paintings, drawings, and I'm so amazed at what he can do. And you were on the left, he was on the right, I was here, and you said, I just love these drawings, they're so amazing. And you go, somebody should do a show of drawings. That's what you said, right there. And
I did that.
You did. And I said, you're right. Somebody should, and I'm going to do it.
Well, I remember you saying that.
Because you said that. You said somebody should do a show of drawing.
Yeah.
And that was everything.
Okay.
And when I said I'm going to do it, that was it. I'm going to do it. It was like, yes, that is a show that needs to be done. Yeah. I agree. It's the basis of everything.
Well, I didn't know I didn't take responsibility, but I just knew when I remember the discussion.
Yeah.
And I remember the back and forth that went.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was saying to Thomas afterwards, I will be serious. Because
I was serious.
Because when I look at the masters and how they drew, and a lot of artists, Dean Cornwell, the Golden Age of Illustrators,
all those guys,
all of the publications that are out there on their art, when they include drawings, and as a student in college, going to libraries and checking out books and looking at, and I'm thinking, these guys do what I do, and they had careers.
Yeah. And
they went from drawing to painting. There was, all these different steps. And I said, I can do that. Yeah. I do that. Yeah. And they're important people, and they were a big influence. Their artwork was a big influence on our culture because it
still is
product illustration and on and on and on and on. And to see the Golden Age of illustrators produce from imagination before photography, and they had to use, they painted from life.
Right.
That's what they had to.
Yeah.
And they came up with all of these images, but they started. When I look at landscape painters like Thomas Moran and Church.
Yeah.
And all of those, that whole period of landscape artists, and their drawings were beautiful.
They're gorgeous.
Watercolor studies and things like that before they did the big grand things.
Right.
And so, that made a big impression on me as a kid. and I wanted to see if I could do it.
You did. And are still doing.
Yeah.
So let me finish up by asking this final question. Is there anything you'd want to add that people are listening to about drawing that you think is important that maybe we didn't touch on?
I think we touched on everything that I think I've said everything that I feel about drawing. Is there anything you think I should say?
No, actually, I don't actually think I need to. I think you really, I mean, it comes from your heart. It is who you are.
Yeah.
It's the basis of your art.
Yeah.
It is your art.
Yeah.
And, you're a master of drawing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Ezra Tucker.
Thank
you so much for being here. And thank you for saying somebody should do a drawing show.
Well, you're welcome. I just can't imagine you responded to that in that way.
Yeah.
Because if I just remember the discussion, I'm like, yes, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Drawings. And when you look at, as I said, there are volumes of drawings that I've done that I didn't value.
Mm.
And I haven't valued because I have actually shown drawings to galleries. And I said, we don't want to show you. We need paintings.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, but the whole process
It's the basis.
is an education for collectors,
Yeah.
for students. And I encourage a lot of young people to go to galleries.
Plus, they're just beautiful.
Yeah.
And the most connected emotionally to the artist, I think.
Yeah. And it's a very simple, and when we said therapy, it's the most simplistic thing I think a person could do. Everybody's got a pencil, a piece of paper close to them, or draw on the floor.
Yeah.
Or like I drew in the dirt sometimes when I'm outside in the backyard. I didn't use a stick and I'm drawing in pictures in the dirt.
Yeah.
But it was, again, just my imagination not stopping. And I actually used just any, and my mom would always just say, just can you just sit still and not be looking for something? And she was a seamstress, and sometimes I'd be sitting watching her sew.
Right.
And I'm taking the needles and the pins
And making designs.
Yeah, and also scratching into cardboard.
Yeah.
With these pins and needles just to create imagery. And she was just like, wow. She just thought, at some point in time, you're going to have to stop this.
Yeah, right. She didn't see as a real way to do anything other than fill time.
Yeah, but I think she appreciated it after I became a professional artist.
I'm sure all mothers do then. Yeah. But you had to fight that to get there.
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
So
that's why you are a professional artist, because you could push through that.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of people just can't push through it.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you for
everything,
reminding me what I said.
Yeah, you did.
And I hope I didn't bring too much pain.
Oh, you did a few times. Yeah, I was like, oh, Ezra said, yeah. No, there's a few times when I'm trying to get everybody herded in. I was like, oh, come on, and people call me, how much should these drawings be? And I'm like, oh, let me help you. So, but yeah, no, it's been a wonderful experience, actually.
Well, it's a beautiful show.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did it. Thank you
I am too. Thank you. All right. Very good. Ezra Tucker.
All right.
Yeah. I got Thomas Blackshear, and we're talking about drawing. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to just toot your horn a little bit, because I think you literally are the epitome of the masters of drawing, in my opinion. I know this is a big mantle to carry, but for whatever it is, when I look at your drawings, they're so confident. The lines just flow. You can see they just flow. Yeah. And it reminds me of Dixon, what Dixon could do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it does.
Oh, what a compliment, man. Thank you so very much.
So I wanted to just, since you're in this show, I wanted to talk a little bit about your beginnings and your first remembrance of when you started drawing. Do you remember when it really...
Not really. I do remember that my mom told me that they found out that I had a talent for art when I was around 4. I think around 4, and I said, well, what did I do? She said, well, what we noticed was you did this drawing of a cow. And she said, it looked like a cow. And she said, that's when we realized there was something different. And I said, oh, okay. Excuse me. Of course, I don't remember that.
No.
But ever since I can remember doing art, it was always drawing. And I think about it sometimes now because I remember these cowboys I would draw, and they kind of had a feeling. I guess I was impressed by Fred Flintstone, Hanna-Barbera type cartoon. So I was trying to draw kind of like the way they looked, and it didn't. Now that I remember how I did it, it didn't really look like Fred Flintstone, but it, that's what it was inspired by. But I would just draw all the time. When my father was in the Air Force, and we grew up in the Air Force, and we was born in Waco, Texas, moved to Plattsburgh, New York. From there, we went to New Orleans, and from there, we moved to Atlanta, and I grew up in Atlanta.
Right.
I got to Atlanta when I was around eight years old. And I was drawing all the time. And of course, what happened with me, because we moved around here and there, the kids that I grew up with didn't play sports. So I had never played baseball, had never played basketball, football, because, they didn't play it So when I moved into this neighborhood in Atlanta for the first time, all the kids and the boys and girls there, they played baseball.
Right.
And I was so bad that, I was the kid that they would never choose because I would be the last one they choose because I was that bad.
Right.
And it was embarrassing. I remember the first time I played baseball, my sister got up there and she did better than I did. But I just didn't. And so because I was always rejected, I just kept to my art because that was a safe place for me. And I just kept drawing. Just loved to draw. I realized later on, because I guess when I was a teenager, and I was drawing all the time, I really developed some understanding and skills that I wasn't even aware of until I actually went to art school. I went to art school at the American Academy of Art in Chicago. And when I went to art school, we would have the figure drawing classes, and, we would do that thumb measuring trick. And, that's so you can get the measurements correct, in the proportions of the body and all that kind of stuff. And I started realizing as I was doing the charcoal drawings and stuff like that, that a lot of times I didn't even have to do that. Yeah. And that's when I realized, wow, all these years I must have trained my eye to a point where I didn't have to I could pretty much get the measurements correct just by looking. And I would still use it from time to time, but I noticed that and stuff like that. So after I became an illustrator, because I wanted to do the best I could. I've always, I always had that aesthetic. I wanted to, do the best I could do. And so what I would do is when I would do a drawing and I had an idea of what the pose should look like or what, the specific nature of what the drawing is to be, if that drawing was not right, I would do it 3 times. I would do it 4 times. Sometimes I would do it 5 to 6 times if I had to, because that drawing had to be correct. If it wasn't correct, I would never take it to a painting. But once I got, and I still do that today. If I do a drawing and it's not right, I'll do it 3, 4 more, 5 times until that thing is looking the way I said, okay, now that's the way it's supposed to be. And then of course, I'll take it to the finished canvas and paint it and stuff like that. But I will not touch that canvas if that drawing is not correct.
And that's a part of your process.
It's a part of the process.
Yes.
Drawings, of course, the easiest thing for me to draw is portraits. I've just been doing it so long that the quickest thing for me to paint is a portrait. It's just boom, 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 because I know I understand the structure. I've done it long enough, and that's why I have been able to, a lot of times when I do Native Americans and I don't have any Native American artists. So what I'll do is I'll find people, white, black, whatever, who have certain bone structures. And then if they have that and I put a light on them, all I need to do is get the lighting that I need on. Then I'll get photographs of Native Americans, and then I will transform them into a Native American. And I've even done that with a friend of mine who was black one time, and I had to do a Shogun general for the cover of an Atari game they had out at the time. And I didn't know any Asian people to pose for me at the time. So I got my friend who was a black guy, put him up there, shot him, put the right light on him. And then I got photographs of Asian and I changed him into and made him look like he was Asian. So,
Right.
You know, so I do that all the time now. You know, of course it would be better just to have somebody,
Right.
you know, but
you live in you live in Colorado.
and
Yeah.
if I don't have access to it, I will make it work.
Right.
So
And so when you have these photos, you have the image you've shot, and then you look at it as reference to how you want to draw. Yeah.
yeah.
And then you do, because I've seen many, images where you'll do the same piece over and over. Is each time you're just trying to capture the essence of what's in your mind
yeah.
to make it to, okay, this is what I see, and now I have it down in pencil.
What it is this. A lot of times when I am fooling around and trying to get a certain feeling in the face, sometimes it's just not working. Even if I have good reference, the shadows are not correct, or something about it doesn't have this clean precision and honesty that makes it feel like it's it's all intuitive. This feeling, I call it like almost like a spider sense. It's like I can see it's not there, and if it's not there, I'm gonna keep doing it until it gets there. There have been a couple of times it never got there, and then I just had to say, okay, I have to change the pose. I have to do something different. But most of the time, if I feel I have enough good reference, I could usually work through it, and it will become. And there's an elegance and a beauty to the line where there it is. And then I can move forward from that point.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at drawings, and I own a bunch, and I've looked at them a lot.
Yeah.
I can pick out your drawing without knowing who did it. It's just very specific. They go, yeah, that's Blackshear for sure. And whatever that, I think it's the eyes often. There's something about the eyes often are just... There's an emotion to it that I can feel. And is that some of what it is in your drawings? Is that facial expression often your eyes in that?
I never looked at it like that. I guess I look at it more as there is, so you said a word, I can't remember what you just said. You said something that sparked there's a sensitivity to emotion.
Yes.
That I'm looking for.
Yes.
And if I see something and it looks dead and it doesn't have that sensitivity, it's not working.
Yeah.
And I got to get that sensitivity in there.
Yeah.
I tell this story that happened because this really did happen to me. I know people are going to say, "What's wrong with you?" when I get ready to tell you this, but I'm just telling you the truth. This happened.
Yes.
I went through this thing one time where I was praying and I felt God was telling me, I'm going to teach you about art. And I had never felt that or heard that before. And I'm like, well, okay. And so for the next few days, it might have been weeks, I don't remember how long the period of time was. It was like I was in class. And he was just teaching me stuff about art and emotions and stuff like that. And he says, the first thing he told me, and I've told a few people the story. First thing he said was, now, the first thing you have to understand about art is alive. It's living. What we draw, when you draw on a flat surface and stuff, there's something living underneath what you're seeing. And he says, so always remember, good or bad, whatever that subject is, that thing is alive. And I was like, well, wow, I never heard that before, So then he started teaching me other things and stuff. So one day I was working on this painting for Low and Brow Beer. At that time, there was a commercial called, it was a commercial about this Bavarian king who had he was so rich and wealthy, he had his own brewery, and he would store his beer in a ice cave, and he would guard it with a chain lion to the beer kegs. And this was a commercial on TV. So they wanted me to paint this lion in an ice cave chained to a beer keg.
Right.
So I did this lion and he had this really regal, cool look in his face and his eyes when I did the drawing. As I was moving forward with the painting, I lost the intensity and the beauty. And I was very upset because it died. It just died on me. I lost it in the painting. So I tried to fix it. It wouldn't work. So I knew the only thing I had to do, I had to do was I had to get some gesso, wipe out the head, redraw it, and then repaint it. And so that's what I did. But it took me a long time to get that look again. But I got it. And I painted it very carefully this time. And I maintained that intensity and that beauty in the image. And I went through, literally said to myself, man, this was like blood, sweat, and tears I went through to get this feeling.
Right.
Well, a few months later, there was a big art show in LA, illustration show, and I was in the illustration show. I think it was the LA Society of Illustrators. And so I put the painting in that show. And when I went to the painting, they were on these walls that were about 4 feet high, so you could see each row that you could go through and look at. So they weren't so high that you had to look over anything. You could just stand there and see other people looking at painting stuff. So I was in this one row. My painting was in this row, and then I went to a parallel row right next to it, looking at other artwork. And while I was doing it, some people came by and were looking at the artwork, and they stopped at my painting. It was three. It was two guys and a woman. And so they didn't know I was the artist. So I was just sitting there looking at their response to the art. And I heard one guy say, boy, look at that. And they said, wow. And the guy said, look at the eyes. And the other person said, yeah. Then one guy said, you know, I can see the blood, sweat, and tears he went through to get those eyes. And I heard God say, I told you.
You heard that.
Inside I heard, I told you. And I said, okay, I get it. And that's what happened with this thing I learned. Yeah. And it was true. I mean, he proved it to me right there. You know, like, okay, I understand what you're saying now. So from that point on, ever since I've done the art that I do, I always do it with the understanding of art is alive and it's real. And so that's why it's so important for me to get what I'm trying to get the right way.
I see. And before you had that reckoning of words and God, did you have that same sense that these are the things I'm producing have another dimension of...
Not really.
It was that. And how old were you when that happened?
I was in my 20s. I was in, wait a minute, no, early 30s. I was in my early 30s when that happened. Yeah.
And it's obviously that stuck.
Yeah.
I mean,
after that example,
you took it to heart. You said, this is, when you hear the voice of God.
Yeah, well, when he told me he was going to teach me about art, and then he specifically told me certain things and then proved it to me, I was like, okay, I understand now.
That's so interesting.
So, and it really helped me too, because it's also helped me to understand that's when I'm doing art, it's not just me doing pretty paintings in art. Sometimes it's a spiritual thing that goes on where things that I am going through or whatever, as I'm doing this, it goes into the work. I don't know how to explain it. I'm just telling you, I'm aware of this. Right. I'm aware of this kind of stuff. I don't know how many people are aware of that kind of stuff, but I know I am with my own artwork.
Yeah, it comes from a different place.
Yeah.
And you can feel it, you embrace it. Yeah. And it shows.
Yeah. Well, good.
It does. And it comes out in the eyes for me.
Okay.
Right? Okay. That's where I see the soul, right? They say the eyes are the soul of the person.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you look at one of your drawings or your paintings, I mean, I look at red. It's in my library. I look at it every day.
Okay.
Every day I look in those eyes. Yeah. And I was like, how did he do that?
Yeah. One thing, too, is because I was Mark English, for some people who know, he was one of America's most famous illustrators.
Yes.
I was his apprentice. And I learned his technique of drawing, which was a beautiful, incredible technique. He used to always study Nikolai Fesher. I mean, come on. I mean, who, as far as I'm concerned, hands down, you know, nobody's better than Nikolai Fesher. But he would do this technique that was similar to what he did. And I learned from him how to do it. And he would also do this technique he would do when he would draw. He would draw in a scribble. he would shade in a scribble. And I've learned how to do that. And I love it because he did it because he was doing he came up with this technique where it was a drawing that he could do in one night, but it looked like he might have spent a whole week painting the painting when he could do it in one night. And he created this technique, and it was called the oil wash, Mark English oil wash technique. And he, as his apprentice, that's how he asked me to become his apprentice, because I was in his art class. He gave us a demonstration because I pretty much challenged him to demonstrate for us his technique, because I knew if I saw it, I knew I could do it, you know? And so he did it. After he did it, I went home and I did my illustration for the class, and I did it before anybody else in the class. And I brought it to him. I said, I have my illustration, it's done. And he said, you did it already? I said, yeah. He said, well, let me see it. I took it to him, and I think he was shocked. Yeah. And after a couple of weeks, he asked me if I would become his apprentice. Yeah. Because I could copy his look, you know, and stuff. And but no,
he saw it.
Yeah. And so this little scribble technique that he taught me, I still use that today, and it's very open, very loose, and it's got a real fresh feeling to it. I love the techniques, and so that's one thing I use. Another thing I use too is what some people might like about the drawing is structurally, I break it down into more of geometric shapes and lines, so it has more of an abstract feeling as far as the design in the different planes of the face and stuff. I break it down that way as I draw it and stuff. So that's always in there. Sometimes it comes through the painting, sometimes it doesn't, but it's always in there. So yeah.
And when you paint your paintings, do you draw on the canvas as well?
Yeah,
right?
As a matter of fact, as an illustrator, I learned that when I have this vision in my head, or I finally get the drawing the way I want to duplicate that drawing on that canvas. So what does that mean? Once I blow it up on the canvas, I redraw the thing, and I do a detailed drawing just like my drawing on paper. I do it on the canvas. Why? Because I want to make sure I get as close to that drawing, because it worked the way I needed it to work, and I don't want to lose that. So I will take my time to make sure that that drawing is duplicated on that canvas, so when I paint it, it looks like the drawing. So I do that. So that's why it takes me a little longer than a lot of people to finish my artwork.
Yeah, we know about that.
Yeah, yes, you do. But anyway.
So it's interesting, because it sounds like to me, you can't really do one of your paintings without drawing.
No. I've gotten to a point now. As a matter of fact, as the classes that I teach now, I don't even have them do the drawing anymore. We just start with the brush. Yeah. And I don't start with a drawing with the brush. I just take a broad brush, block in the shapes and shadows, and then draw. Yeah, paint it from there. Yeah. So I do that. Yeah. I need to do more of that in my finishes. Yeah. It's just that because people like me for a certain look, I try to maintain that degree of excellence, hopefully, in the painting.
Yeah, they're always consistent. Yeah. They always do. Yeah, regardless of the subject matter, which is what's interesting, too. Yeah. Again, you can always tell a Blackshear painting or a drawing. Right. So, is there anything else you want to just share about drawing that people might want to know?
Once you understand structure, there's so many things you can do to make the drawing live a lot more and breathe a lot more than what you think. A lot of people think everything has to be so precise and so full of detail. The art of drawing is learning where to put the detail and where to leave it out. See, so you could do a lot of things, and I learned that from Mark English too, even to the point where if there's a part of the drawing that has a lot of shadow in it, there's so many things you could do where that are so loose and rough, but still put in certain areas of detail that would turn that thing into a beautiful drawing. And you just have to know and have the confidence to know that you don't need all that other stuff. But a lot of people don't know that. But you know, when you look at people like Mark English and the way he would do a drawing, when you look at people like Bernie Fuchs and the way he used to do a drawing, Bob Peak, and it's kind of interesting when you look at people like that, Bob Heindel, when you look at their drawings, they all have the same basic understanding. And it's kind of funny because sometimes you might almost wonder, did so-and-so do this drawing? Yeah, because they all have something similar, even though they're different. But, you know, yeah, it's that understanding of structure and how to be free enough to still maintain what's necessary. So
structure, but creativity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that to me sounds like it's one of those skill sets that takes a long time to actually get to.
I think if you are exposed to it and understand how to grow in it and from it, it's going to make you a better artist all the way around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you look at your own drawings, do you see that Mark English type of
I see all kind of influences.
Yes.
Sometimes even some Norman Rockwell, because I look at Norman Rockwell as kind of like a paint chip artist. What I mean by that is he was so masterful in the way he would put a brush stroke down that they look like chips that are put together and stuff, like puzzle pieces that make up the face. He was really good at that, and I noticed that, how that's done and stuff. So
yeah, I think from just a few times we've talked, you're very observant of other people's art.
Oh yeah, and I have to be,
and really looking and dissecting, and
I dissect. I dissect. I learned as an illustrator. When I knew enough about a certain medium, I learned to look at paintings to know, and I've even tried to teach my students how to dissect a painting. You know, even I tell people when I was an illustrator, I didn't think that my style was good enough. So what I did was learn how to copy everybody else. And that was very valuable for me. You know, because now I understand and I can do different styles and I can do different ways of thinking how, you know, realistic images up against flat graphic shapes, all like everything. I mean, you know, Japanese screen prints, you know, line drawings, you know, shadow, shade, everything. I just
absorb and then it regurgitates out too. But your own style, that's the thing. Because it all comes back to, I can always tell your pieces.
Yeah, and the thing, like I said, I didn't like my style, but your style is your style. You can't get away from it. You know, thumbprint. No,
it is. So, well, I would say this was a masterclass in drawing by Thomas Blackshear.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we really loved having you in this show. We look forward to doing a big show, Neon Cowboys, in the future. But right now, I got to tell you, I'm just so thrilled to have your art here so people can see it. And I know probably the next couple hours you want to go around and look at all the other people's art. So
you got an incredible gallery and museum here, man. I want to see all this beautiful artwork.
Thank you, Thomas.
All right.
Thomas Blackshear, thank you.
Thanks
all right, that's awesome.